Out, Eric said, not even killing the engine. A long walk might teach you respect. The empty rest area looked like a movie set for abandonment. Boarded-up snack bar. Vending machines gutted years ago. A parking lot cracked into islands of weeds. The rain hadn't started, but the air had that iron smell that comes seconds before a storm. My hand slid into my coat pocket. One press. The recorder app glowed, then went dark again. You're seriously doing this? I kept my voice steady because steady is what plays well in court. Actions have consequences, Amanda. He drummed 2 fingers on the steering wheel, the same rhythm he used when waiting for traders to fold. You called my accountant. You embarrassed me. You questioned my withdrawals like you know what you're talking about. 37 miles. Walk. 3 hours earlier, we were clinking glasses over a perfectly medium-rare ribeye while a server shaved truffles like snow. He'd posted a boomerang of the champagne with the caption, "To forever." The check cleared on our joint card. Later, 10,000 disappeared from that same joint account without a note. I'd asked why in the car. That was the pivot from anniversary to punishment. I didn't mention the single pearl stud I'd found under our bed on Tuesday, or the duplicate spreadsheets I'd photographed on his home office monitor last month. Not yet. Order mattered. So did witnesses. It's going to storm, I said, glancing at the horizon. A bruise-colored band was swallowing the last of the twilight. Then you'd better start walking. He finally turned his head, jaw set in that deal-closing tilt I used to mistake for competence. Unless you're ready to apologize. 6 months ago, I would have. That was before I found the second set of books. Before the offshore wires. Before he started siphoning little bits of us into accounts only he could touch. Before he told our friends I was anxious, fragile, too emotional about money to be looped in. Okay, I said, and opened the door. The leather creaked, my heels touched pitted asphalt, and the wind woke like it had been holding its breath. He stared at his phone, thumbs moving. Tessa, probably. He loved telling her I was being dramatic. The Mercedes rolled backward, then forward, then shot away with a bud squeal that didn't match the car's price tag. Tail lights dwindled and vanished behind the trees. I counted to 60. Then I walked, past the lonely blue sign, past the cracked picnic table, toward the old gas station shell whose canopy hid a shape as familiar to me now as my own car. The black F-150 eased forward. Noah stepped out with an umbrella and a thermos. My brother didn't look like a bodyguard, but that was the point. Got it all? He asked. Every word. I stopped the recording and filed it into a folder labeled with the date. 8 months of similar files lived there like perfectly laid dominoes. He said, I need to remember my place. Good. Noah's eyes flicked to the road. Sloan will love that line. Place plays ugly on a transcript. I took the thermos. Coffee and heat spread through my hands. The first fat drops hit the canopy and pinged like distant taps on glass. Lena? I asked. She's been on it all night, he said. As soon as he moved the 10 this afternoon, she captured the whole chain. 2 years of quiet bleeding into 3 jurisdictions. He hesitated. And she flagged something else. Client money. It's not just marital assets anymore. The sky broke open. Rain hammered the truck roof as we climbed in. The wipers carved running water into momentary windows of clarity. Noah took the back roads we'd tested on 2 separate Sundays because planning wasn't paranoid. Planning was survival. Hotels ready? He asked. Under my maiden name, I said. Clothes are there. The backups too. Desk clerk will remember me checking in alone, soaked, shaking. I swallowed the burn of it. Sloan walked me through the exact words for the incident report. Eric would pour scotch when he got home, pleased with himself. He'd picture me somewhere on the shoulder of a county highway, mascara tracks on my cheeks, begging for a ride. He didn't know the cameras Noah installed under the guise of a security upgrade had been capturing more than porch pirates. He didn't know the secondary phone Lena bought me was loaded with encrypted backups of everything, bank statements, wire confirmations, email threads where tax strategy meant hide it from her. He didn't know Sloan, the divorce attorney who made opposing counsel blink too often, had already booked a 9 a.m. filing slot for emergency orders. My regular phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. We hit a light at the edge of town. Rain slurred it into a red comet on the windshield. You still good to play it like you walked? Noah asked. He hated this part, the theater of it. Yes. I tightened my coat around my shoulders. Camera angles in the lobby. Towels. The statement about being left alone. The timestamps. He nodded, even if his mouth was a hard line. You don't have to be brave in the lobby. Just be believable. In my head, I made a list, the same way I had every night for months when doubt tried to take up space. 1. Press record. 2. Keep him talking. 3. Don't show what you know. 4. Hotel, incident report, receipts. 5. Sleep if you can, prep if you can't. The hotel's side entrance glowed like a harbor light when we turned in. Noah idled under the awning. I stepped out into the wet air and let it paint me miserable. In the lobby, a night clerk with a cardigan and kind eyes reached for towels. Oh my God. Are you okay? My husband, I said, voice thin, hands shaking just enough. He left me at a rest stop. I walked until someone helped. She guided me to a chair. The printer hummed. She slid an incident form across the counter. I signed my maiden name. The pen felt heavy. In the elevator mirror, I looked the way I needed to look, ruined but whole, soaked but unbroken. Room 512 swallowed me with a soft click of the lock. I double-latched the chain and finally let the stillness spread. Then I set the hotel phone on the desk, opened the recorder on the backup, and played what I'd captured in the car. Eric's voice filled the quiet like cold air. You think you gotta say? I earn it. I manage it. You blow $70 on kale and think that makes you a partner. $70 for groceries. $800 for the burgundy he'd bragged about pairing with the steak. I let the hypocrisy sit side by side, the way juries like to see it. A text from Noah lit my second phone. Lena found 2 more offshore accounts. Also, Sloan got us Judge Ray for the morning. Good rotation. I stared at the rain-streaked window. 37 miles behind me, a man who thought fear was control had handed me his last mistake. I set my alarm for 7. I didn't know if I'd sleep. I did know this. Tomorrow, we'd stop playing defense. I didn't sleep. I just watched the city lights blur through the rain until dawn bled into the room. At 7, I checked our joint account. He'd already moved another $20,000. Panic always looks the same. Fast, sloppy, traceable. By noon, the suite had turned into a war room. Lena arrived first, hair tied back, carrying a laptop and 2 heavy cases filled with color-coded files. A forensic accountant with nerves of steel and a voice like calm water. The Cayman transfers are frozen, she said, opening a spreadsheet. He tried logging in 3 times at 6 a.m. That gave us an alert. Then Noah came in, his hoodie damp from the drizzle, a takeout bag under his arm. Sloane's on her way. She talked to the clerk last night. You were perfect. When Sloane arrived, heels sharp, coat darker than the rain, she didn't waste time on greetings. Judge Ray moved us to 1 p.m. emergency injunction hearing. He's furious about the abandonment. Amanda, you'll testify first. Stick to facts. We have the recording, the financial trail, and the incident report. That's all we need. The word testify still made my stomach twist, but 8 months of fear had burned into something steadier. Purpose. Noah connected his laptop to the TV and queued up the footage from the cameras he'd installed months ago. The first clip showed Eric in his study at 2 a.m., flipping through folders he thought were private. Our investment portfolio. My grandmother's property deed. He photographed each page with clinical detachment. Lena pointed to the screen. He was building duplicates. Slow replacements. If you hadn't found this, he could have swapped originals for forged versions over time. Classic financial erasure. The next clip made me physically turn away. Eric and Tessa, his assistant, on our couch. My robe. My wine glasses. My home. He said the conference was mandatory that night, I murmured. Volume? Sloane asked softly. Eric's voice filled the room. She believes whatever I tell her. In a few months, everything will be in my name. Noah stopped the playback. We can show this, but it's optional. You sure? Yes. I straightened my shoulders. The court needs to see all of it. We drove to the courthouse in silence, wipers thrashing against steady rain. By the time we reached the marble steps, reporters were already milling about, drawn by whispers of a hedge fund scandal. I kept my head down. Inside, the courtroom smelled of varnish and nerves. Eric was already there with his high-priced attorney, Richard Blackwell, the kind of man who smiled only when billing. Eric's suit was crumpled, his tie loose, eyes red-rimmed. He looked small. When he saw me, something flickered across his face, shock, maybe disbelief that I'd show up composed. Then anger. Always anger. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Ray entered, expression unreadable. "We're here on an emergency petition regarding spousal abandonment and financial misconduct." Sloan stood. "Your Honor, my client, Amanda Hale, was deliberately abandoned 37 miles from her home during last night's storm. We have a recording." The room fell into that electric silence that happens before ruin. She pressed play. Eric's voice cut through the speakers. "You need a lesson. Maybe walking home will remind you who manages the money in this family." Every syllable landed like a hammer. Eric's attorney whispered furiously, but Eric couldn't look up. "Furthermore," Sloan continued, "we have evidence that Mr. Hale has been moving marital assets into offshore accounts for the past 18 months, along with possible misuse of client funds." Blackwell rose. "Objection, unsupported allegations." "Exhibits A through F," Sloan said, sliding a stack of documents to the clerk. "Wire transfers. Dates. Amounts. Signatures. All his." The judge's expression darkened as she scanned the pages. "Mr. Hale, did you leave your wife at that rest stop last night?" Eric adjusted his tie. "We had an argument." "She?" "Yes or no, Mr. Hale?" "Yes, but she had her phone. She could have called someone." The judge lifted her brows. "So considerate of you." A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the courtroom. Blackwell sank lower in his seat. Before Sloan could continue, the back doors opened. 2 men in suits entered, flashing badges. "Apologies for the interruption, Your Honor," one said. "Thomas Chin, Federal Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant for Eric Hale's arrest on charges of wire fraud and embezzlement." The color drained from Eric's face. Blackwell jumped to his feet. "This is irregular." "So is stealing from your clients," the judge said calmly. "Mr. Hale will remain until this hearing concludes." The warrant lay like a death sentence on the clerk's desk. Sloan didn't waste the moment. "Your Honor, we request immediate freezing of all marital assets and temporary support for Mrs. Hale." "Granted," Judge Ray said. "All accounts frozen. Exclusive use of the marital home awarded to the petitioner. Temporary support set at $10,000 per month." Eric exploded. "10,000? That's absurd." "Mr. Hale," the judge snapped, "you abandoned your wife in a storm and defrauded your clients. I'm being generous, not holding you in contempt. Sit down." He sat, shaking, as agents moved to stand by the exit. The judge banged the gavel. "Next hearing in 30 days. This session is adjourned." As we gathered our papers, my phone buzzed, unknown number. I glanced at the message, saw Eric searching your car with a flashlight, then he drove off fast. "Everything okay?" "Mrs. Collins." I didn't answer. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air sharp and clean. Eric had taught me about power. About silence. About fear. But he never learned that power only lasts until someone hits record. The morning of the arraignment, the courthouse felt colder than the weather. Vending machines hummed. Reporters lingered by the bronze seal on the floor like gulls. I tightened the button on my charcoal jacket and followed Sloan past the metal detectors, past the murmurs, into a room that would decide what the rest of my life might feel like. Eric sat at the defense table with Blackwell and a junior associate who looked barely old enough to rent a car. He'd lost whatever varnish money buys, sallow cheeks, restless hands, a new haircut that tried too hard to erase sleepless nights. When our eyes met, his mouth shaped a smile I recognized from better days. I let it pass through me like weather. The prosecutor, Torres, opened without theatrics. Just dates, balances, routing numbers, transcripts. The recording Sloan filed yesterday played again, this time through the court's aging speakers. You need a lesson. 37 miles. My voice after study controlled. The jury watched me instead of him, watched me not yell, not cry, just log the moment. It's harder to argue with calm than with fury. Then came the testimony that stacked like bricks. Lena walked the jury through flows of money that had sweaters tied around their waists and fake names, shell companies that looked like boutique consulting firms, trusts that existed only on paper. A lattice of movement designed to confuse anyone who wasn't fluent in patience. She made it simple. Point A to point B to point pocket. A former assistant took the stand, not Tessa, but the one before her. He asked me to clean entries, she said, hands folded tight. If I hesitated, he told me I misunderstood finance. She didn't. Tessa came next anyway, hair pulled into a severe knot, eyes rimmed but clear. Immunity in exchange for honesty. He said Amanda would never fight, she told the jury. He said fear keeps people quiet. She handed over screenshots and a voice memo. In it, Eric sounded like a man explaining chess to a child. You take one piece a week. No one notices a missing pawn. Midweek, the door opened and a young man stepped in, shoulders squared like he'd learned posture from a mirror. Christopher Walsh. 22. A name that meant nothing until Torres said the words that made the room inhale at once. Mr. Walsh is the defendant's son. The story unfurled quiet payments to his mother, threats if she ever told. The accounts matched the same ones Lena had flagged. The line between private failing and professional crime dissolved with one bank statement. Blackwell tried to spin each witness into misunderstanding or malice. He floated the idea that I'd doctored files. He suggested grief had made an elderly client sign things she later forgot. He said I wanted money. Sloan didn't flinch. She wants safety, she said, each syllable a closed door. On the second Friday, Eric took the stand against counsel's advice. He sounded like himself at first, certain, reasonable, wounded. It cracked when Torres asked simple questions. Did you abandon your wife during a severe weather alert? Did you route client funds through entities you controlled? Did you tell your assistant she was cover? He tried to answer everything with context. The jury didn't want context. They wanted yes or no. Deliberations took less time than the lunch line downstairs. Guilty on every count that mattered: wire fraud, embezzlement, exploitation of vulnerable clients. He exhaled when the clerk said guilty the third time. I felt, absurdly, like opening a window. Sentencing came later under skies the color of a bruise healing. Judge Ray's voice was as even as it had been the day he heard the tape. You preyed on trust, she said. On marriage vows and retirement accounts alike. This court imposes 96 months in federal custody. Restitution as calculated by the government. Post-release supervision. No contact. The gavel sounded like a door ceiling. As the marshals guided him up, Eric looked at me the way he used to look at quarterly reports, like the numbers could be bullied into telling a prettier story. His lips moved around words I'd heard in 100 forms, not over. The cuffs glinted. I didn't answer. What comes after a verdict is harder than movies admit. There are forms and keys to return, and days when the absence feels like a hole and days when it feels like air. My phone filled with messages, some kind, some indecent, some from strangers who wanted a hero. I wanted a plan. We took the settlement and the whistleblower award and rented a brick building with tall windows and exits you could find in the dark. We painted the walls a quiet cream and installed locks that listened. We called it Harbor. Not a shelter exactly, more like a place to breathe, while people like Lena and Sloan and Noah helped you trim the wreckage off your life without cutting what still mattered. Our first client was a nurse whose husband had frozen her out of their accounts and threatened immigration consequences that didn't exist. Lena found what he'd hidden. Sloan filed papers that made him blink exactly the way men like Eric blink. Noah taught her son how to change a flat tire and memorize their new building's exit routes with his eyes closed. The boys started sleeping. Jennifer came 3 months sober with an apology baked into a box of still warm cinnamon rolls. She asked to answer phones. She stayed late after support groups and folded chairs with a care that felt like penance and also like love. When she told women how she'd believed a man who used her secrets as keys, they listened in a way they didn't listen to me. We were both necessary. My mother visited on a clear afternoon. Some days the fog stayed mercifully far away and her gaze held. She touched the edge of a framed thank you note and smiled. Kindness is also a kind of proof, she said, like she was sharing a market tip. It shows what's real when everything else lies. Tessa surprised me the most. She showed up one morning in a blazer bought at a consignment shop and asked if she could talk to interns about red flags in mentoring. She said the word without flinching. He made me feel chosen, she told them. Chosen isn't the same as safe. The interns wrote that down like it was a formula. A year after the verdict, a letter arrived from a federal prison 2 states away. For pages of accusation, revision, file. He said I'd trapped him. He said I'd destroyed something sacred. He ended with the same line he'd started our end with, I hope you learned your lesson. I had it framed and hung next to Harbor's fire evacuation map. Different kinds of safety. Both useful. Sometimes the rain starts up while I'm locking the glass front doors at night, and the city smells like pennies again. I stand under the awning and watch the water sheet across the streetlights and think about how many of us got left in some kind of storm by someone who called it love. I think about what we built from it anyway. He wanted me small enough to carry. I learned to take up space.